So related to the discussion we just had about Iran and the MOU,
Mm,
while I was away, I couldn't miss the fact that Sir Keir Starmer lost his defence secretary, John
yeah.
Healy. He resigned, which was a real shock because he would be very much seen as a Starmer loyal. And he gave a number of reasons for this. And I mean, if I just give you the headlines and then we'll have the discussion. And basically, 5 reasons: insufficient defence spending, disagreement over the long awaited defence investment plan, basically saying it just lacked the resources, concerns about military readiness, belief that national security was compromised, and a loss of confidence. This is the big one: the loss of confidence in the government's commitment to defence. In fact, publicly criticising the Prime Minister and the Chancellor for failing to commit to successful defence. So that was sort of Healy. And then at the same time, with the dominoes falling, the Armed Forces Minister, Al Kens, who's quite prominent,
Mm.
ex SAS, I think it was, or ex
Yeah,
Barrack.
so yeah, he's quite he's a proper military
Yeah, yeah, chiseled
chisel
face.
jaw, yeah.
Yeah, all the rest of it. He resigned, and I caught a little bit of his resignation speech. Basically, he was saying that he could no longer credibly be Armed Forces Minister. The big reason that I took away was the fact that he felt we were gearing up for a war that was 30 years old and that we weren't switched on to the
Mm,
massive changes on the battlefield, in particular drone technology. And he talked about that. He also was very, very angry about the fact that we continue to prosecute the armed forces who were managing the conflict in Northern Ireland at a time when the political activists of that time have all been given a bye and
mm,
forgiven.
mm.
And he also talked, I think, about the conditions that some of the armed forces are living in. So a very principled resignation, two principled resignations. But the thing for me is that none of this makes any sense, because I think everyone would agree that the fact that the increases out of the defence investment plan were tiny, and some of them
Mm.
were already in train, so they're not real increases. This idea that the defence of the country is the first duty of the Prime Minister, it's not making sense. And if the Prime Minister can't see that the world is a more dangerous place, then you wonder what he's actually looking at. And then there was this notion that the Treasury would not support his moves to fund this. And you think, well, I can think of many prime ministers of the past who wouldn't have put it as a choice.
No,
And they would have said, look, this is what you need to do. Come back to me with a plan, not come back to me with your views on the subject. So do we have fundamentally a weak government? And I know that's a bit of a daft question given what's going on in Makerfield, but forget that for a second. Do we just have a government that doesn't really know what it wants to do on defence? Or if it does, is just conning the public with these platitudes about defence being the first priority, when really all they're trying to do is balance the books. And that's
well,
how it feels. That's how it feels.
well, it's always been a bit of a bone of contention, hasn't it? Defence, in the sense that I mean, you remember under the last government that Ben Wallace resigned, having said that
Mm.
his government had hollowed out the armed forces. That's the exact phrase, had hollowed out the armed forces. So we're almost in a similar position now than we were then. In that Healy's gone and he's made, as you say, a scathing criticism of both the Prime Minister personally, because he was talking to about how he effectively saying he talks a good game, he goes to the international conferences and makes these commitments, but then doesn't follow through in terms of they were talking about increasing defence spending to 3% by 2030.
Yes. Yeah.
That was
Yeah. And
the
didn't Healy
figure.
say something like, I'm sure that, our enemies won't wait for the Treasury to get their ducks in a row? Well,
No,
we've said that on this pod. I mean, it's bizarre.
we
Uh,
have, and I don't, because the other argument, the contra argument to that is that, we've always had chiefs of staff talking about the threats that we face, because this is negotiating, or has been in the past, a negotiating stance to get more money spent on the armed forces. But I think it's in plain sight now, isn't it, the dangers that we're facing, whereas
well,
maybe in the past it was all a bit nod and a wink, and maybe this might happen, and maybe that might. He's not sort of the language that's being used by Putin in respect of Britain and some of his foot soldiers talking about how they ought to nuke London and all these awful things to talk about, we need to have some sort of preparation in
Well,
place, don't we?
plus you're looking at, the reality is that they can reach us with their hypersonic and ballistic missiles.
The Reshnik, isn't it? It's called. Yeah,
Yeah.
the hazelnut in Russian. I don't know whether you knew that.
I had heard that, but
Yeah.
thanks for reminding me that. But they can reach us, and others are saying that there's a very high prospect of direct conflict with Russia in a couple of years. Now that's probably because they might go and test NATO's will in some of their neighboring states. So you look at all that and you think, well, what's? And then you had George Robertson. Was it George Robertson?
Yeah, it was George Robertson,
the Labour guy. He came out and he said, look, this is a basket case and needs resolving. He said that.
Ex-NATO General Secretary.
Ex-NATO, and a Labour
and a Labour Defence
Minister.
Secretary. Yeah.
So whoever you listen to, and I accept obviously the armed forces leaders are going to be talking up their game. Whoever you listen to is saying we need to invest. So, but what was interesting to me was Cairns was saying we need to invest, but we need to invest in the right things. And you think, well, surely the military leaders would be saying that. Or would they just be feathering their own nest? Don't know. But either way, all this, I think, is something to be fearful of. It feels a level up from when Wallace resigned, a significant level up because of the threat level. And then, was it this week, we've had the bizarre situation of a Russian frigate firing a warning shot at a yacht, which they claim was to stop it crashing into them, didn't they?
Yeah.
And all these, and then obviously our Marines are taking over one of the shadow fleet. So there's lots of things going on. But the point I'm trying to make here is that with Healy and Cairns resigning and Robertson's report, all this is, to me, is suggesting that you have a cabinet, in particular the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, who are not taking this seriously.
No, I'd agree. I think we need that extra spending. And I think, I almost think we need a defence levy so that people know. How do you think the British public would take to paying an extra penny, tuppence on income tax for defence?
I think at the end of the day, if there was some assurance that the money raised would find its way into the armed forces, then they might.
It would have to be ring fenced, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Whereas others would say, oh, hang on a minute, the tax take is so high.
See, I mean, there you are. That's the conundrum that Starmer's in, isn't it?
Yeah, but he's the Prime Minister. He can make the call, can't he? He can make the call.
One can argue that we need more spending on defence, but the money's got to come from somewhere, hasn't it? And you either borrow or you increase. And please, because I know people like Farage again say, "Oh, we'll get it from the benefits bill. We'll cut from the," and it's just nonsense. It's just nonsense.
Your options are, aren't you? If you look at it from a strategy point of view, if you need to spend more on anything, in this case, defence, you can raise taxes, you can borrow, or you can reduce costs. It's the same as running your house.
Absolutely.
So, that's for them to figure out. That's what they get paid the big bucks for. But my point is that forget that bit. This is definitely one where surely our leaders recognise that we can't fan around and we've got to get on with it in the way that Germany have. They
borrowed heavily, haven't they? They borrowed heavily to pay for it.
They did, but they were fortunate in that their government debt was nowhere near the size of ours to start with. So their if you like, their credit was a lot more reasonable. But yes, they did. They borrowed it. And if you can, I've forgotten which minister said it, but if you can unashamedly prioritise some of the spending within the UK with UK-based armaments firms.
Well, you can do what Putin's done. You can build your rearmament on the basis of the economy, can't you? Yeah,
you can.
Absolutely.
You can. But I keep going back to it. My belief is that for whatever reason, Mrs. Reeves and Mr. Starmer just don't get it. They just don't understand the priority of this. Otherwise, they would have made it happen, wouldn't they?
Well, it's inexplicable, but I can't imagine that Mr. Starmer doesn't. He's going all the time to NATO summits and going to G7 meetings where he's the one who, he's one of the most bellicose leaders in the Western world with regard to the situation in Ukraine. So I don't for 1 minute believe that he doesn't get it. I don't follow that.
So why won't he fund it? Is he too weak?
No, I think there are And you're going to argue, and I know the first priority of a prime minister is to keep the nation safe. But from the perspective of, from a political perspective, it's got to be funded, hasn't it? It's got to be funded. And you can push that question aside, but that needs to be answered. That is the question.
Well, no,
where's it going to come from?
But that's not for you or me to decide.
Well, that's an easy cop out, isn't it?
No, it isn't.
You can say, why is he not doing it? But then you can't say where the money's coming from.
No, but I've just told you it's got to come from either taxes, reduced costs,
but which one?
Or borrowing. Well, but what I'm saying is, we're getting into the weeds here. What I'm saying is, I expect my Prime Minister on this issue to say, yes, I recognise that we need to invest more in defence. I've had a review. I'm not going to ignore it.
No.
As I appear to be doing. I've got my two senior ministers on this telling me it's all a mess. They're off.
Yeah.
I will fund this, and this is how I'm going to do it.
From where?
Might not. Well,
from
that's
where,
up to him. But that's up to him to decide, isn't it?
No. If you're saying he ought to do this, you ought to at least have an option.
No,
that
I don't need to. You're missing the point. A strong prime minister a strong prime minister would say, "This is a priority. Everyone in the country can see this is a priority. I'm going to do this. I might borrow a bit more. I might reduce costs here. I might raise tax here." Your idea of what did you call it? A levy, a defence levy. I don't care what he does. But what I'm saying is, why doesn't he do something like that? Why this pitiful no increase until 2030? That's what I don't understand.
Well, I haven't heard anything from any of the opposition parties that are suggesting.
Yeah, but they're not the Prime Minister.
Where they'd fund it from. No,
but he's the Prime Minister.
He isn't, but he also has to take it. I'm agreeing with you, but I think the argument that he has to do this is fine. But I think if you're going to force him into doing it, which I think he needs to do it, then you at least have to be honest enough to say where you would get the money from. You can't, no. We must all have an extra 50% increase in our wages. But I'm not going to tell you where the money's coming from. You must do it, Prime Minister. I mean, where's the money coming from?
Well, hang on a minute. That's a bit hypocritical. You just did an article a minute ago about Burnham's wish list, and you said, he doesn't have to say how he's going to pay for it because he's in opposition.
No, exactly.
Well, I'm not even in opposition. All I'm saying is I would expect my Prime Minister to recognise that defence in 2026 is probably a priority.
You're copping out because you won't say where you would get the money from.
I'm not copping out.
I told you where I'd get the money from, a levy on taxation. Where would you get the money from?
No, that's not the point.
You're missing the point.
You're missing the point. The point is
you're copping out.
I'm not copping out.
You've got the ends, but you won't provide the means.
But
you're
I'm
not
the
interested
Prime
in
Minister.
the marine. Well,
I'm
you're
not the Prime Minister.
We wouldn't have, that argument is
if you
facile,
think
isn't it?
I'm copping out,
we can't have any political conversations if you just can say, I can't give you an opinion because I'm just not the Prime Minister. That's ridiculous, isn't it? You've got to have some sort of means to the end. And if you're going to say, oh, no, I can't, I couldn't possibly do that. What would you do?
I think you're missing the point here. My point is not where the money should come from, is that why isn't our Prime Minister making this a priority and telling us what he thinks he would do?
Well, because
I can't change his mind. He's not going to go to the country, is he?
We'd all agree on that, but it might be nice if you were to offer the means to an end. But you're just saying, no, we'll just pull it all out of the sky. It's no good just announcing something if you don't know where the finance is coming from.
Well, I genuinely think I heard that his idea was, and I thought it was quite a reasonable proposal, to apply a 1% haircut to budgets across all departments and take it from there. And I thought, well, that's at least, it's a bit of a blunt instrument because then you get someone saying, oh, but we're a priority or something weird. But at least it's fair and it's simple. So, I was reasonably happy with that. But, he hasn't gone ahead with it, has he?
They sent the dip back for review. It's not been published yet. So yet, I think, is the operative word.
But he's lost two of his leaders in the process.
Well, he has, yeah. Well, we shall have to see how Dan Jarvis, isn't it, who's taken over? It was the West of England mayor, wasn't it, at one point? Dan Jarvis?
Well, he couldn't have done a very good job because I'd never heard of him. But
Right.
look, we better leave it there. I've gone a bit
Yep.
over my slot.
Okay.
So get off the pot, Sir Keir, is my advice.